to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. And we have some breaking news from the one and only Alex Jones announcing a false flag attack being imminent. And we'll be taking a look at all of that in typical MINDSHOCK fashion with logic and reason at the forefront, attempting not to fall for any logical fallacies, unlike everything else out there. If you want to help support the MINDSHOCK podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case, topic, logical analysis, code podcast, or requests. You can also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Unless, of course, you're with us here live, drop them in the live chat. I'll try to get to all of them, and you can become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Welcome, TJ Hoff. TJ saying, yo, Bruce from on vacation in the Gulf of America. Yeah, that triggers a lot of people for some reason. And those same people, oh man, we're going to go on a whole aside from about the Gulf of America, all because of TJ Hoff. But the same retard maxers that get triggered over it being called the Gulf of America now, instead of the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico. But it had many different names in the past. I mean, bodies of water are named very different things, so they arbitrarily only care about one narrow window. And it has to be named that only in the window, despite the fact that names change for many things. Mountains, lakes, gulfs. You know, it's so weird. It's so weird. But then again, triggered goofs are always triggered. Gulf of Mexico was previously called the Gulf of New Spain, the Golfo de Nueva España, and then also the Sea of the North, Mar de Norte, which is actually kind of interesting because I guess it's north from South America. And the Aztecs called it the Chalchihuitlicuahuacal, the house of Chalchihuitlicuahuacal, after the deity of the seas. The Maya had a very simple name for it, the Naha, the Great Water. And then obviously other groups also had different names. So, yeah, interesting. But what's really interesting is other maps also called it the Gulf of Florida specifically, which is generic, interesting. How many goofs would be triggered if it was called the Gulf of Florida? But anyway, that's my aside there. Let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Obese Tuna saying it's a hot one today in the UK. Yeah, it's hot everywhere except maybe in the Arctic and the Antarctic for many different reasons. So, let's jump right in here to Alex Jones. Now, before all the retard maxers write him off yet again, what is his track record? Actually, I think we should go over that as people get in here, because this is kind of like a spur-of-the-moment emergency podcast, because I wanted to go over this real quick. But let's look at Alex Jones' track record real quick. Oh, wow. YouTube really doesn't want me to put this clip on. What is going on here? This is weird. Give me 1 second here. Why? Okay, here we go. From the MINDSHOCK archive. One of the greatest clips regarding the one and only Alex Jones. Shill or not, what is his track record? The Earth Show on KJFK 98.9 FM radio, where he's talking about conspiracy theories, etc. In 1996, he started that show. So he started InfoWars website in 1999, which also had videos there. So again, I don't see an exact date here. I don't know if it's 2001, 2002, somewhere around there, but this is clearly a relatively old video. And obviously, nothing of what he said has come true or is accurate in any way. But let's listen to it so we can see how wrong he is and how crazy he is.
Facts and common sense are in. Yes, there have been corrupt empires. Yes, they manipulate. Yes, there are secret societies. Yes, there have been oligarchies throughout history. And yes, today in 2002, there is a tyrannical organization calling itself the New World Order, pushing for worldwide government, a cashless society, open borders, total and complete tyranny, where human beings are absolutely worthless. There's 6.25+ billion of us, and the globalists have said it many times. There's too many of us. We're causing a problem. We need to be culled at the tune of 80%. It's amazing to talk about that, but it's the globalists, the UN, their own public statements, and they've convinced a lot of liberals and elitist conservatives and others that by going along with this, that we're intelligent members of society. It's the ultimate Malthus world view. It is this radical, virulent form of social Darwinism. It's the excuse of tyrants. And by creating open borders where there's no national sovereignty and only global bodies that control all the resources, by centralizing and socializing health care, the state becomes God, basically, when it comes to your health. And then by releasing diseases and viruses and plagues upon us, we then basically get shoved into their system.
So obviously all of that completely false from this lunatic.
To build a new world order.
A new world order. A new world order. A new world order. New world order. A new world order. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
That I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
A new order of the ages.
A new world order.
But of the global order, of a new world order. World order. But what does the new world order mean in this new world order? It is a new world order. I think a new world order is emerging.
And we are in the midst of one of the historic global transformations that is going to eventually lead to a new world order.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
We need a great reset. We can build a new social contract, global order.
Is to actually create a new world order.
A new world order!
And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order.
There's a need for a new world order. There's a need for a new world order.
So yeah, I mean, clearly there's no group ever referring to themselves as the New World Order. They've never done that before. It's not going on now. I mean, he's definitely on some kind of drugs.
New world order.
A new world order. New world order. New world order. A new world order.
New world order.
New order. New world order.
World order. New world order. New world order. New world order.
A new world order.
Order.
A new world order.
A new world order!
A new world order.
There's a need for a new world order.
He's clearly lying about all of this. There would never be any kind of power grabs or depopulation agendas through any kind of diseases. I mean, that's just outlandish. I mean, there would never be any lockdowns or anything like that, or any kind of death stemming from such, or any kind of emergency treatments that could be highly dangerous. I mean, there would obviously, I mean, this guy is such a loon. I mean, even back in 2002, everything he was saying was completely wrong, and clearly none of it has come true. Now let's take a look at a clip from 2017. So we went 2 decades back. Now let's go half a decade back, 5 years ago. Has his accuracy improved? And let's look at his professionalism. I mean, say what you will about him being a completely wrong and a liar about everything. He was relatively professional back in this clip from 2002. I mean, relatively professional in his presentation and demeanor. Now let's take a look at, so that's how it started and how it's going in 2017. Now let's take a look.
All this is a societal wrecking ball to destroy any semblance of normality, any semblance of basic human biology that you see in the bees and you see in the birds. Imagine if somebody in a demon outfit showed up next to a baby giraffe and said, "Hi, I'm a demon. Be inclusive. Don't be mean to me. Let me wear demon horns and come up and look like a complete alien from another planet. Let a space alien." And by the way, this is a program. They dress up like space aliens all over the United States and all over the world. I told you, in horrible demon psychopath outfits that make Pennywise look beautiful. And they show up and they have their way with your children in demon outfits. I mean, if you've got men that look like 400-pound goblin demons with your children, there's nothing you won't put up with. There isn't a species on the planet that would let something that looks like a space alien get up close to its kids, but only in America does it happen, and I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it right now. I can't handle it more.
What a complete loon. Clearly, there's nothing like this going on in public, going on in schools. I mean, what was Alex Jones smoking in 2017 for him to think that anything like this could ever happen? I mean, it's 2022 now. Clearly, he was completely wrong and lying about that also. And also his professionalism dropped. I mean, he's just screaming like a loon now over these things that were clearly never true. They're clearly not true now, and they will clearly never happen. I mean, this guy is a complete lying buffoon. He's always wrong about everything. I mean, is there a single thing he's been right about yet? I mean, this guy is like a master of always being wrong about everything. I mean, how does he have any followers? Why would anybody visit the InfoWars website? Why would anybody watch his horrible show where it's just lies upon lies upon lies and conspiracy theory, quackery, and paranoia about things that have never happened, clearly aren't happening now, and will definitely never ever happen in the future? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Can any of the MindShock listeners out there explain this guy's appeal? I mean, they were right to censor this guy. I mean, if all he does is spew these lies, all these things that have never happened, aren't happening now, and will never be happening in the future, clearly he needs to be deplatformed and censored, because liars who are always wrong about everything should not have a right to speak publicly. I mean, who can disagree with that? Any MindShock listeners out there, can they explain why this guy is so popular that even after his deplatforming, people continue to talk about him, and he's possibly even more popular than before the deplatforming? I mean, what is going on in this world today? Where is the human decency? Where corrupt liars can just go on the air and say all these lies. What is going on? MindShock listeners, please chime in to explain the anomaly, the enigma, the corrupt lying bastard known as Alex Jones. Okay, I was obviously a little heavy on the sarcasm. Some people actually didn't get it. There were comments on that video regarding, how dare I blaspheme against Alex Jones. Thanks for the support, Obese Tuna, saying Alex Jones is a hero. Blair and Brown were certainly globalists. Welcome, Jeff U1P. I think Jones is not too highly intelligent, certainly not dumb, but he is one of the few which uses his mind, so that would make him more intelligent as so-called intellectuals. Alright, so it is actually kind of shocking at how dead on he was all the way back in 2002. Like a cashless society, I mean, yeah, obviously people were talking about it, but who in 2002 was convinced it was definitely going to happen? I mean, it's kind of crazy. Not to mention all the other things about the frogs and everything. So my question to coincidence theorists, to authority-worshipping cultist bootlickers, The Dunning-Kruger crowd, aka retard maxers. What has Alex Jones ever been wrong about? Now, most people are going to bring up, oh, what about the Sandy Hook incident? So what? But they won't actually bring up what he said. So he said that the parents were crisis actors. I still haven't seen anyone bring up a clip where he claims nobody died. But his claim about the parents being crisis actors listed on crisis actor websites was correct. They were listed on the website. Now, were the websites a fraud and they actually didn't work as crisis actors? That's a whole separate question. But Jones's claim that the whole thing was staged, that doesn't mean nobody died. It means it was an artificial event. So with the news reports of like the guys in camo being tracked down by helicopters outside of the school, that was in the initial reports. Those are curious, and those disappeared from the news. So what's weird, and I've done tons of podcasts talking about coincidence theorist psychology. When it's a combination of Stockholm Syndrome, cognitive dissonance, and of course, the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you haven't checked out the Dunning-Kruger effect podcast I actually outlined some of the limitations of the study of the Dunning-Kruger effect. And my additions to it conceptually to understand the psychology of bootlickers, authority-worshipping cultists who just take on blind faith whatever they see on the idiot box, or that they think governments would never stage things. That's a completely separate issue with whether or not people died or not. Those are two separate issues. But again, when you're a retard maxer, allergic to logic and reason, your brain is not capable of having actual logical discussion, so you have to link, in an appeal to emotion logical fallacy, you have to link those two things that are not necessarily connected. Because you could have staged events with real killings, you could have staged events without real killings. That's also a false dichotomy logical fallacy. But again, when you're dealing with authority worshipping cultists, if they're allergic to logic and reason, they're not going to be able to understand even basic children's level fallacies. But let's take the Connecticut incident, just let's take it out of the equation. Just in the terms of Alex Jones. What has he been wrong about other than the Connecticut incident? And it's just crickets every time. One other thing was Y2K. That's the only other thing. So in all these decades, so what is this? So we started in the early 90s. So you're talking over 3 decades, and people can only come up with 2 things. So out of all of the countless hours, he might actually have the world record for most amount of broadcast time. I actually went over that and went live. There's like 2 or 3 people that are up there. I think Howard Stern, the degenerate scum Howard Stern. If you haven't checked out my series on Stern, you could check that out here on MINDSHOCK. Yeah, there was Stern. There were 1 or 2 other guys and Alex Jones. They're all in the running. It's kind of hard to get really accurate timetables on their airtime, especially for the older shows. So, Alex Jones, 3 decades of claims and reports, and people can only name 2 things. And most people don't even name Y2K. And the Y2K, I've talked about, I need to do a deep dive on Y2K. I keep saying I'm going to do it. People want, the Oklahoma City bombing is on the agenda. I need to do that one, and I need to do Y2K. I might actually do the Y2K one earlier, just because I keep referring to it, and nobody really does deep dives in Y2K, at least not anymore. And I remember as it was unfolding, I was on a few different forums, and it was being reported that the infrastructure was compromised on New Year's Eve 2000. There was a compromise. So here's the bootlicker. What authority worshipping cultists, bootlickers, again, the mental capacity's just not there to grasp very basic concepts. So obviously there weren't widespread power outages. That did not happen. Everybody knows that. If you were around, you know the power stayed on in most places anyway. I think the power outages were roughly average for every New Year's Eve. Like, there are some, but there's always some. You know, the power grid's never 100% up. Power does go out randomly here and there. But there were no widespread. There was no mass increase in power outages. That is known. So the electric grid supposedly was not compromised based on that information alone, unless it was compromised without turning the power off. But the defense systems, there were reports coming out that defense systems were compromised. Now, if that were true, now obviously nothing major came from it. Like, obviously there wasn't, you know, any mass attacks or anything. But if that is true, and they were compromised on Y2K, do the gullible goof coincidence theorists really think the U.S. government's going to come out and say, oh, actually, you know what? Y2K was real. We got totally compromised. It's a good thing nobody took advantage of our systems being down. So, like, the goofery in expecting them to admit it if it were true. Now, maybe those reports were all bunk, but there were reports. So people, I will do a deep dive on that. And Alex Jones reported the reports. So was he wrong about the reports? No, the reports were real. Now, the extent of what happened on Y2K, obviously, there wasn't any widespread public meltdowns, nuclear meltdowns, any kind of obvious attacks of any kind. But again, the defense, supposedly there were issues with the U.S. defense system on Y2K. Obese Tuna says, I can remember Y2K. It was widely reported on the BBC. Well, what was reported? Y2K or the fact that the U.S., because the U.S. defense systems being compromised on Y2K, I don't think that was ever reported in the mainstream media. That was on some, like, obscure conspiracy forums by insiders who said that they had some issues and they were vulnerable to attack, and it's kind of a good thing no attack happened. Jeff UNP says, some people sold their business and partied expecting Armageddon. Yeah. Well, you know what's weird? You know what would be a great podcast? Well, I can include that in the Y2K podcast, because it'll be a deep dive. How many of them actually regretted it, though? It's like, the people, it's kind of weird, like people who get these terminal medical diagnoses. Oh, you're going to die in 6 months. And then they totally redo their whole life. They're no longer a wage slave, etc. And then they actually don't die. They get in shape. All of a sudden, it's remission or whatever magical nonsense the establishment calls it. Not only do they not die, they get healthier than they were before. And they totally change their life. But they wouldn't have done it if they didn't get the terminal diagnosis. So it would be curious to see how many people regretted doing that on Y2K. Because if they had the time of their lives that year that they wouldn't have had, I mean, who knows? I guess it depends on the extent they went into debt, but... So Obese Tuna says, they all speculated that stuff would happen at the time. Yeah, some speculations would be that, like, planes would be falling out of the sky and all this other Armageddon type stuff. The only thing that I've seen that actually happened was defense systems were down, so theoretically, other countries could have attacked the U.S. successfully in a certain window. So, yeah, because they had to rewrite all the code, all the software code, for a 2-digit year versus 4-digit year, all obvious stuff. Maybe not to young kids if they don't know what that is, but yeah. All right, so let's get to the false flag prediction by Alex Jones here, which is kind of hard to write off based on his track record. And if anybody in the chat knows of something that he was definitively wrong about, what was it? Because he seems to have called everything every step of the way, which is also why some people think he's a shill, because how could he have that much insider knowledge? But regardless, here's the latest clip from Alex Jones. I don't know, he does kind of look like a different guy too, but you could check out the other podcast episodes on that. Was Alex Jones replaced? So here is the latest from Alex Jones.
Carlson just issued an emergency warning to the American people, the people of the world. Tucker Carlson just issued an emergency warning to the American people, the people of the world. Israel has been telegraphing, signaling that they're preparing to stage a massive false flag attack to be blamed on Iran to drag us back into their failed war for the Greater Israel Project. Today on my broadcast, Tucker Carlson, hands down, said the most important thing he's ever said. He issued a warning. We have top Israeli defense experts and intelligence experts saying if America doesn't stay in our war for Greater Israel against Iran for regime change, America needs a new 9/11. And when you study 9/11, how Netanyahu was in power, then working with Rumsfeld and others, and the New American Century Plan, where they said we need a new Pearl Harbor in April of 2000, around 3,000 dead. We need an American city to be hit with high civilian casualties so the American people get behind a Pax Americana and the invasion of 7 countries in the Middle East, the final one being Iran. And now Israel says that Iran is going to launch a nuclear 9/11 or something else against America, and that will teach us to get behind Israel and the Israel lobby. Clearly, Israel is willing to stage a false flag.
So this is mind-shocking, revelatory stuff here. So the first thing that jumps out on me here, surely in the internet age, in the smartphone age, especially with a lot of the so-called noticing going on regarding the so-called Zionist lobby, a lot of the people getting wise to the fact that the victors write the history books and going back to like World War I, World War II, and me going back all the way to the Boxer Rebellion, of the late 1890s, which I think actually is the first real World War. And I'll be going over that more in the Real History of the World series. Actually, I might do that episode before the Y2K episode. I really need to get back on that one, because it's just mind-shocking stuff. How many nations went to China in 1898? And nobody knows about this. There's photographs, there's all of this. It's like a mass international war with like 9 nations. Some people believe it was the last uprising of Tartaria, the last remnants of the previous civilization cycle that needed to be squashed. And the majority of them were already squashed. Some people believe the Civil War in the U.S. in the 1800s, early to mid-1800s, is when it was all really concluded. But there were these little pockets of rebels and uprisings, and the last major one was in China, 1898, for the Boxer Rebellion. But anyway, with all of the noticing going on, is it possible they might not think it's going to be this easy this time? Because Gulf of Tonkin, so the false flag to get America into the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, a lot of goofs still don't know what that is. Like, a lot of coincidence theorists, like, they still, it's just shocking, especially in a post-Epstein era. Which, by the way, the year surrounding 9/11, for some reason, all those millions of documents are redacted in the Epstein files. No, not just redacted, they've never been released. So they released a bunch of other files redacted, like huge blocks missing. But they didn't release anything at all surrounding that. Isn't that curious? Like, why? What? So if Epstein was an Israeli asset, Mossad agent or otherwise, that's curious. That's definitely curious. So is it going to be this easy to stage a false flag in 2026? Maybe. I mean, there's bootlickers out there. I mean, what did COVID teach everybody? There's still a lot of bootlickers out there. So maybe, but at the same time, I think there are more non-bootlickers than ever before in modern history. So it's a curiosity, obviously just my assumption. Obviously, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But some people, so there's two main schools of thought. Let's not fall for false dichotomy, logical fallacies. There's 2 main schools of thought regarding the whole COVID issue. Some people believe it was a compliance test, and they're going to roll something else out. Other people believe that was the original plan by the corrupt powers that be, that shouldn't be, the New World Order. And it didn't work because compliance and uptake was nowhere near what they assumed it would be, even though it was massive, even though it was absolutely massive. It was nowhere near maybe 80, 90% plus, which is what they wanted. It was closer to maybe like 50, 60%, or even less. I mean, who knows the real numbers? So even though there was mass compliance, there was also quite a lot of non-compliance, and that COVID radicalized a lot of other people that otherwise would not have been radicalized into opening their eyes regarding the corruption of the world. Now, another curiosity is I think a lot of the retard maxer coincidence theorists, I think they doubled down on retard maxing because it was so obvious. So their only cope was to double down because they need that security blanket of statism. They need to pretend that nanny government is good and they're going to protect them. They just mentally can't handle it. They're too mentally weak. So they have to double down on their illogicality. So that was another interesting development. But the two schools of thought were, it's just a test to see the metrics, to see the baselines, etc. And then the next one is going to be the real one. I'm going to add a third school of thought here because I'm not sure the two are directly related. So, out of the two schools of thought, I mean, who in the chat thinks, let's do a poll in the chat. I wonder how many people think, so, was COVID the big one? Or just test? If it was the big one, then it failed. If it wasn't the big one, then it didn't really matter the exact percentage of compliance because they're just going to use that information for the real one. I'm going to go over one little piece of evidence that would suggest it was the real one and the big one. Alright, poll's going live in a second here. Okay, poll is live. So let's get that out of the way first, and then I'll go through one interesting piece of evidence. Give me a second here. Alright, let's look at the poll results so far here. So far, most people think it was a test. So the big one, 33%, test 50%, too triggered to answer 17%. Always understandable. I'll give it another minute here to roll out the poll. So most people think it was a test. Okay, 57% say test. Oh, people still voting. Okay, 56%. Les Xylophone says it was the big one. Well, also 2020 is an interesting year. 2020 is an very interesting year. The year of perfect sight. All right, I'm going to end the poll here. So the final tally was 33%, or yeah, 33% say it's the big one. 56% said it was a test. Les Alphonse said they used the 90s to build up the COVID tyranny. Well, I would say the late 90s, right? early 90s are pretty cool. So, all right, hold on. Wait, CJ says you can be wrong and then be right. It doesn't mean you were not wrong. What do you mean? CJ says he was wrong. What's the subject? Oh, flat Earth, about the shape of the Earth. Well, that's okay. So when I say what he was wrong about are like his claims about the goings on of the world, like as a news anchor, technically. I'm not talking about like any kind of anything philosophical. So like the shape of the earth, I mean, that's not like a news event type claim, right? It is whatever it is, and it always was, unless you want to go with the simulation theory where maybe it would change its shape, whatever. But if it's not a simulation, then that's not really like a current news event, right? Just like his thoughts on God or whatever. That's not really the category of him news reporting, right? Like, what was he ever wrong about news reporting? That was the subject. So, okay. And some people think he is a flat earther, and he's just saying that stuff while bringing attention to the subject, while pretending not to believe in it. Again, I have no idea. But, yeah. So, okay, so here's some interesting evidence. So, there was Agenda 2020. I actually think it was Agenda 2000 first. Then it was Agenda 2020, and then Agenda 2021, which is actually kind of interesting. And exactly 2 decades after a certain event. And then now, all of a sudden, they switched it to Agenda 2030. So it's possible that this is all just taking longer. If Alex Jones is not a shill, if Bill Cooper is not a shill, if the one and only Serge Monast is not a shill, these people might have simply awoken too many, right? So now it's harder for them to implement their plans, and they have to keep pushing it back. I'm not saying that's true. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. This is MINDSHOCK, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But that could potentially point to 2020 being the real one, the big one. And it just didn't work as planned, so they had to implement newer agendas. There could be some overlap with tests too, right? Let's not fall for false dichotomy. They could have built in, okay, worst case scenario, if the compliance isn't what we think it is, then we'll just make another event later. Even though that was never the original plan, because there's 2 different options here, right? The options, well, there's more, but in this case, in these 2 particular schools of thought, they could have wanted it to be the big event with the contingency, oh, we'll just do a secondary one, another one later, if the compliance isn't high enough. Versus a situation where, okay, we don't know exactly what the compliance is going to be, so we're going to implement this test, and the second bigger event was always planned, so those are 2 different options. Okay. So, yeah. Jeff UNP says, it was the big one perhaps for the switch to the crypto economy, but bioweapon-wise, I think we'll must wait for some zombies, then they go in their bunker and steal our pretty women. Not even that much pretty women left. Oh man, was that too mean thing to say? I'm simply referring to obesity stats. I do not make up those statistics. Do not hunt me down for that. Les Avlin says, Bruce, when you do the MK Ultra episode of Columbine, may I please join you? Email me. Email me on that one. We can go over a lot of that stuff. Ducking Felonies is laughing. Oh man, Ducking Felonies is such a great name. I always get a good chuckle. Ducking Felonies. So the prediction is, so going back to what I was saying, compliance was not as high as it could have been. It was not as high as it could have been. So in terms of another false flag, so obviously there's a small contingent of people, like even for 9/11, there were people blowing the whistle day one, like right as it was happening. They're like, oh, this smells funny. This is funny business. Not a lot of them. Unlike, for example, the Sandy Hook incident, right as that was unfolding, so all those years later, all of a sudden there's a lot more skeptical people. A lot more people thinking critically instead of bootlicking. Because back in Gulf of Tonkin, I mean, how many people were really saying, wait a second, Yeah, Alex Jones did call 9/11. Should we play that clip for anybody new here? I always forget. I mean, even though we have our usuals, there are some new people here sometimes. Let's see where that clip is. I think it was this one.
That there is
July 25th, 2001. July 25th, 2001.
that there is any terrorism. We know who to blame. The point is, if any terrorism comes, it's from this government. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s, running the Mujahideen war, and whose family builds all the military bases over in Saudi Arabia right now, and sits on the board of Iridium Satellite, he's the boogeyman they need in this Orwellian phony system. I want the White House numbers up there now. A big part of this solution, after you research all the government terrorism and check out what I'm saying is true, call the White House and tell them, we know the government's planning terrorism. We know Oklahoma City and World Trade Center was terrorism. We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun. If you do it, we're going to blame you because we know who's up to it. Or if you let, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And you could save the planet. We're calling it Operation.
So that's curious. I mean, he's also gone after Israel before. We went over all those clips. I'm not going to go over all of them now. But these are interesting predictions from Alex Jones. So his next prediction, there will be a false flag to escalate the Iran war. So is this Gulf of Tonkin all over again? Now, they did mention nuclear as an option, which we, of course, have to talk about. If you haven't seen my deep dive into are nuclear weapons real, where I have all the receipts. All the receipts. Apparently, there's not much evidence for that. Now, that doesn't really matter, does it? Because clearly they have really powerful bombs, so it doesn't even really matter, right? They could do a lot of damage with bombs. That's the point. A lot of coincidence theorists get really lost on a lot of this stuff. They get so triggered that something isn't exactly as advertised by their string pullers. Because they bootlick that hard that they have no logical processing power left. Les Zalaphone says, what if we have something worse than a nuke? Well, technically, a lot of these direct energy weapons, theoretically, they can be deployed, if that's what was used in California and Hawaii. Supposedly, they can use that on a much more massive scale for instant vaporization. So technically, it would be way more powerful than the blast of a nuke. And we don't know what degree they were using those. So again, I don't claim anything is true or untrue. If they do have direct energy weapons, they could have been using them on like 1% intensity in Hawaii. We have no idea. Jeff U1P says, the blast is less relevant as the EMP enemy. Yes, so the electromagnetic pulse, that's already been tested on small scale. So if they deploy that on a grand scale, anything not in a Faraday cage, or by a foot of lead or a certain amount of gold, solid gold, anything not shielded by lead or gold, or in a Faraday cage, would be fried and electronically unusable. So you're talking the entire electric grid down, all electronics unusable. So, yeah. Les Zalaphone says, just paint your roof blue. So here's the thing about that. For people that say direct energy weapons are targeting certain light frequencies, so the theory is they can change the frequency. So, for example, like the Obama or Oprah estate in Hawaii that was untouched, or any of the poorer people, they're using certain colors. They could paint their roof a certain color. Then if they switch the frequency, then it's going to be a different color that is spared. So, yeah, take that. I mean, I don't know. Again, if they have these advanced weapons that they could just change the frequency, I mean, I don't know. You would have to know in advance what frequency it would be, right? But then again, Jeff UNP says, still at research lead paint and lead I'm considering. Was the whole thing a psyop where like lead paint? Because lead paint supposedly is bad for you, but is the side effect of lead? I mean, I don't know if the lead paint is good enough though. Lead-based paints, I'm not sure they would be good enough, but that is a curiosity. That's definitely a curiosity. CJ says 25 years ago, every enlightened person was saying they're going to have a shot that traps your soul in an artificial matrix. That's really creepy. I actually haven't heard of that exact phrasing, right? Like, obviously, the whole zombification and brain frying, MK Ultra with frequencies and radiation from cell towers, all that stuff, and possibly through some kind of injections. Yes. I haven't heard specifically about a shot that traps your soul in an artificial matrix. CJ, if you have some specific links to that would be interesting to see the exact phrasing that people were using. I'm not even sure Alex Jones phrased it that way. Jeff UNP says 10 millimeters lead, if I'm right. Lead paint blocks Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals. Yes, but I don't know if that would be enough to block direct energy weapons, because they would be much more powerful frequency. I think if they're using 5G, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that stuff, for mind control, that might work. But I'm not sure that that's what they're using for the direct energy weapons. Welcome, Scott Hawkins. Les Oliphant says, what about a giant mirror? Now that's an interesting idea. I need to do a whole podcast on mirrors. Mirrors are fascinating. That is very interesting. I'm going to say, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, but I would say that might be the best idea. A giant mirror, like a high quality, thick mirror. That sounds like a great idea right there. So a giant mirror with a middle layer of lead. There you go. Cover the bases, baby. Cover the bases. So yeah, is this event going to happen now? There's no date here. There's no date here. So there is something else interesting that we can go over that might be adjacent to this that I've seen on the interwebs being talked about. Well, give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can get this clip. Okay, I found it. So here's an interesting video. So apparently, I don't know if these people are all shills. They're just paid influencers that just make videos about whatever. If it's a psyop, it'll be curious. But let's watch this video through. Fair use as always. And so this was making the rounds before this whistleblow or prediction from Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson. So this was at least a week ago now.
NASA, space, aliens, gravity. Let's talk about my second favorite topic. So I saw this yesterday and this morning, and I actually thought it was pretty interesting. It randomly came up on my For You page. So it says on August 12th, 2026, so this coming August, the world will lose gravity for 7 seconds, NASA knows. They are preparing but won't let us know why. So according to the article that I read attached to that, it's saying that this is some project called Project Anchor that NASA has an $89 billion budget for. And the plan is to see if Earth can survive losing gravity. How they're going to do this, why they're going to do this, none of this the article talked about. You guys kind of know, if you've been following me for a minute, how I feel about NASA. We can just go ahead and reference the moonwalk on that one. Do I think they do some good things? For sure. Do I think they waste money? Absolutely. It's not really giving us any information, and now they're labeling it like the conspiracy theorists are talking about this. So my question to you guys, especially people that follow it a little more than I do we know what this is? Is it true? Is it gonna happen? Somebody explain it to me. Or is this just some more internet hype?
So this is kind of curious. So if this is not some kind of psyop, if you were planting a false flag, would you, and if this is real, again, I'm not claiming it is, but if both these things are real, would you choose this opportunity to do it? Or is this the built-in plausible deniability from the powers that be? So that's another thing coincidence theorists don't understand. I mean, they don't understand anything, but specifically plausible deniability. If there is a vast conspiracy, would there be some kind of operation to cover up a false flag, so that way if something does happen, they can say, oh, it was actually just this, even though they manufactured the just this themselves as well. So this is August 12th, 2026, making the rounds as the new date of the Armageddon. So again, I am not claiming any of this is related, but it is a curiosity. It is a curiosity. And Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson have not named a date. They have not given a date for this false flag. Jeff UNP says, then they try to scare you. Don't worry, just don't jump that 7 seconds. No gravity doesn't mean you will ascend, right? 7 seconds is better as 7 days. Well, also, yeah, it's kind of weird, because if this is the information they're choosing to put out, I mean, what does that all mean? Les Xylophone says, what is the moon phase for this event? What is the moon phase August 12th? Let's see here. So the moon phase August 12th is a new moon with 0% illumination. That's curious. It is, wait, it's also a total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo. So there's a total solar eclipse on August 12th, 2026. That's an interesting time. Wow, okay. That's what, is there really? Let me double check that. That's what the search engine is saying. Yes, apparently it is true. So, path of totality begins northern Russia over the Arctic Ocean, passes through eastern Greenland, western Iceland before moving south to cross Portugal and northern Spain. Other parts of the northern hemisphere, including most of Canada, much of Europe, northwestern Africa, parts of northern and eastern U.S., from Alaska down to North Carolina, will experience a partial solar eclipse. Okay, so wow, okay. That's definitely, we got a lot of coincidence stacks here. We definitely do. That's interesting. How long is the total solar eclipse? Not 7 seconds? No. Okay, hold on. Well, actually, it's only going to be, the totality will last a little over 2 minutes. So not a long time, but longer than 7 seconds. I wonder if this is all true. Are they planning that 7 seconds inside of those 2 minutes? Oh man, this is crazy. This is crazy. Les Xylophone says there is definitely going to be an event. Someone is getting ritually sacked. Are you talking about ritually sacked or ritually stacked? They're really stacking the occult on this one. Jeff UNP says it's a rumor reptilians lose the shapeshift during eclipses, so I've heard. That's another curiosity. I haven't heard that specifically. I do need to do episode 3 in the interdimensional reptilian shapeshifters running the world. If you haven't checked out the first 2 episodes, I did 2 deep dives. I do have a 3rd one coming as well. But yeah, they got rid of all the big bells. Supposedly the frequencies from the bells ringing also interferes with interdimensional reptilian shape-shifting abilities. So we do have a lot of curiosities here. We have these massive coincidence stacks this summer. We have Alex Jones predicting another false flag. His 9/11 prediction, pretty accurate, whether he copied it from Bill Cooper or not, which apparently he did, supposedly, or they have the same whistle, or they have the same sources, right? Did we ever examine that possibility? Does Bill Cooper and Alex Jones, do they simply have, I mean, it could make sense if they know a lot of the same people, that a whistleblower might have given both of them that information. But either way, his false flag prediction percentage seems to be pretty accurate. Now again, he didn't give a date here. Is this 7 seconds of no gravity? Again, if you haven't checked out the Einstein debunked episode here in MINDSHOCK, check that out. Let's not get triggered over the term gravity. Electromagnetic forces. If XYZ is getting turned off or affected, because in a lightning storm, you have the electric field being affected, where some could say gravity is lost with that inversion of electricity. But anyway, with XYZ, if XYZ is getting affected or manipulated for 7 seconds, or who knows, maybe longer, coinciding with this eclipse, is that also going to coincide with a false flag event? These are the questions. Jeff UNP says CERN is also down right now, if I'm correct. Wow, are we really adding CERN to the table here? Okay, hold on a second. Wow, they turned it off June 29th? Wait, today's June 25th. Wait, it has entered. Wait, it's gonna be turned off for 4 years? The long shutdown 3? Okay. Oh, no. It's just the main Large Hadron Collider. The smaller accelerators are still on. Then they're upgrading. They're making a fully upgraded Large Hadron Collider to start in 2030. That's interesting. So is that agenda? So it starts with Agenda 2030 coinciding. Huh. That's interesting. So it's still on right now, right? Well, it says right here, according to New Scientist, on June 29th it will be turned off. That does add another wrinkle to all of this. Some people think it was primarily used to induce demons into this realm. So it was turned on September 10th, 2008. It's kind of curious. This is a long time ago. That was the first beam injection. And then the first high energy collisions March 30th, 2010. So that's, that was a couple years down. Interesting. I mean, things did start getting worse in 2008, right? Did time officially start speeding up in 2008? Because we know by 2011 is my line of demarcation between the old age and the new age. I think the Mayans were kind of spot on there. So that is curious. So we have another man, this is crazy. The coincidence stack is crazy. So CERN has been virtually online since 2010 and is being somewhat turned down on June 29th and will remain down until an upgraded version starts in 2030. That's if these official statements are to be believed in the first place. Obviously. The burden of proof is on positive claims. Unless you're there verifying all this, how does anybody know? So, yeah. Curious. A lot of curiosities here. Health Master Jedi says, Witsit was talking about the World Cup in the USA. People from all over after that trying to claim a hentavirus pandemic. Yeah, that would be an interesting alignment. I looked at some of the World Cup stuff. They do got the Illuminati symbolism ramped up, dialed up to 11 for that event, like the Olympics, but yeah. Is this music video for Black Hole Sun? Depicts suburban residents with nightmarishly distorted smiles engaging in mundane activities before they and their surroundings are violently sucked into an apocalyptic black hole. So you got CERN being turned off in 4 days. You have a false flag being predicted by Alex Jones. And then you have supposedly NASA wanting to turn off gravity August 12th. You have 3 different events here. So are they going to try to stack Project Bluebeam on top of all of this? So, I mean, wow, this is going to be a pretty crazy summer. Are they really stacking all of these occult rituals? Is the false... So, are they going to stack Bluebeam on top of false flag? Or is Bluebeam just the official last one? So, in which case, they probably wouldn't. Although, the Hollywood machine is in overdrive with the Disclosure movie from the Hollywood hack, Epstein associate, Steven Spielberg. Obviously, I haven't watched that trash. But, yeah, within the government, the whole disclosure movement, so to speak, ramping up so hard in the past few years. So are they saving that for 2030? Is that the ultimate 2030? Agenda 2030? Or is 2030 the whole psyop to make people think they're going to hold off until 2030? Is that the course correction the powers that be have implemented after their failure of full takeover for 2020? And now, because there was a previous Agenda 2020, or would that violate the revelation of the method? Or are there different factions within the Illuminati, the powers that be, those that are willing to violate the revelation of the method with the predictive programming, and those that are not? Why would there not be infighting with all of these factions? Just like kings and queens of various countries had their own infighting as they ruled over their peons and subjugated humanity. Les on the phone says, don't forget we're supposed to get hit by an asteroid in 2029. Interesting. CJ says, can be physical or penetrable depending on if your biological signature is coded to allow penetration or not. That's actually a very interesting thought, CJ. And do certain injections map those biological signatures? So that way, if there was some kind of mass plan or conspiracy, and I'm not claiming there is, they would actually know who is penetrable and who is not. CJ says, fog light nanotech can be impenetrable or penetrable depending on if your biosignature is coded to allow entry or not. That is interesting. That is very interesting and creepy. So yeah, that is the emergency predictions and whistleblowing from the one and only Alex Jones. Make of it what you will, but we have an occult coincidence stack a mile high here for the summer of 2026. Stay vigilant out there, people. Stay vigilant. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.